away. I'm listening, and it hurts to view from a distance. I'm not gonna give up my patience, give up my rage, give up compassion. No, this is a human condition. When we forget the use and the blessings, you pull our heartstrings. You're sending fire in, all we want is rain. But I believe in your blessings, creating floods and spinning hurricanes, and all I need is your blessing. How do we find courage in this space? How do we find love when we ask for rain? Are we lost or afraid of our darkness? Stop and breathe, my love. We got this. I'm gonna live for today, live for tomorrow, live for the past and all our ancestors looking down on us. Heal me now, your love. Sending fire in, all we want is rain. But I believe in creating floods and spinning hurricane. But all I need is your blessing. You're sending fire and all we want is rain. But I believe in your blessings, creating floods and spinning hurricanes. But all I need is your blessing. All I need is your blessing, your blessing, your blessing. Oh, Yamena Mayo, oh, 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 Yamena Mayo, oh, 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 Yamena, 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 oh, oh, Yamena, 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 oh, 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 Yamena, my oh, 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 Yamena, my oh, 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 Yamena, 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 oh, oh, Yamena, 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 Yamena.
Shabbat Shalom. For safety and for courtesy, please silence your cell phones. And if someone is coming into the sanctuary with the limited seating, please make room for them. We thank you for that. Before the services begin tonight, I would like to direct your attention to some safety notifications. Please take a minute now to look around to notice where the nearest exits are to you. They may be behind you. There are 2 exits behind me off of the Bima. There's exits on the Town Avenue side and in the back of the social hall. Also, at the side of the social hall, on my left, your right, we have a fire extinguisher in the cabinet here, and in the lobby there's a fire extinguisher and an AED, automatic external defibrillator, in the event that should be needed. In addition, in the pews in front of you, the seat pockets in front of you, or at your seats, there are cards there which show the location of exits and the location of all our emergency equipment. Please take a moment and take a look where your card is. In the very unlikely event that we had to evacuate this building, we would meet in the corner of the parking lot opposite the buildings. And we would gather there so we could take a head count and know if everyone got out safely. Thanks for your attention, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Let's try that again. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's great to be with you, and to share this Shabbat. It's a special, each Shabbat is special in its own way, but it's a special Shabbat as it's our Brenda Rosenfeld Scholar Shabbat, and we welcome Dr. Tali Zelkowitz, also a dear and longtime friend of mine. And we don't have a full shul band today, but we have Dana and Menachem with us. So welcome to Dana and Menachem. It's wonderful to have you with us to enhance our music. And just so that everybody knows, in order to give a little more space for our teaching this evening, the service is going to be in a shortened format so that there's a little more time for Dr. Zelkowitz and for questions as that plays out. Probably still run a little longer than normal, but that's how our service will run this evening. So we're going to start with a little music. We know this around TBI as Menachem's Nigun, because Menachem brought it to us here at TBI. So here we go. Let's warm up our spirits with a little music.
Just want to say one thing brief. Menachem's been with us numerous shul band Shabbats, of which this is generally one, first Fridays of the month, but
Since 2016.
2016, wow, it's 8 years. And through that time, Menachem has grown from just another Jew from Poland to just another Jewish cantor from Poland to just another Jewish rabbinic student at the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies at the, American Jewish University now. And starting in July 1st, he will be the full-time cantor at Temple Menorah in Redondo Beach, which means no more Menachem, at least on any kind of regular schedule. So even though some of our shul band folks were not able to make it tonight due to other personal commitments, we wanted to at least invite Menachem and honor his time with us and show our thanks and give us one more opportunity to clap our hands and transport ourselves back to a small village somewhere on the outskirts of Warsaw.
We are going to turn now to page 2 and 3 in our Siddur. We'll ask everybody who's comfortably able to do so to please rise as we bless our Shabbat lights.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu v'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
You may be seated. Turn to pages 20 and 21, and as is our custom before we enter into Lecha Dodi, we take a moment to reflect on the week, to pause on each day, and to reflect on its challenges and its blessings. And then we'll come back together and sing Lecha Dodi.
And Claudia, we're getting a little
Ringing.
ring in the house. If you could just bring down the house a slight bit.
We're going to sing together verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. When we get to verse 9, those in the sanctuary will rise and face the doors from which we entered. Those of you at home, turn and face the entrances to your home to welcome the Nishama Yetera, the extra soulfulness that travels with us during Shabbat, and that Shabbat presence into our space, into our homes, into our congregation. Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, alalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat, lekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, alalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat, lekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad, Ishmeanu El Hamyuchan Adonai Echad U'Shmo Echad L'Shem U'Tiferet Le'Mitchilah Lecha Dodi likrat kalai Alalai, alalai, alalai B'nei Shabbat Le'Kabelah Lecha Dodi likrat kalai Alalai, alalai, alalai B'nei Shabbat Le'Kabelah Likrat Shabbat Le'Kuven Elcha Ki Mekor HaBracha Merosh B'Kedem Mitzucha Sod Ma'aseh B'Machshat Tilah Lecha Dodi likrat kalai Alalai, alalai, alalai B'nei Shabbat Le'Kabelah Lecha Dodi likrat kalai Alalai, alalai, alalai B'nei Shabbat Le'Kabelah Hitoreri, hitoreri Kiva orei Kumi ori Uri, uri Shir daberi Kevod Adonai Alai Nigai Lecha Dodi likrat kalai Alalai, alalai, alalai B'nei Shabbat Le'Kabelah Lecha Dodi likrat kalai Alalai, alalai, alalai B'nei Shabbat Le'Kabelah.
I invite you to rise if you're able to do so and face the doors.
Oi v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha u'v'tzola toch amunei am sekula Oi chala Boi chala Lecha Dodi
Leo. We are going to continue on page 26 with Chatzi Kaddish and Leo Raphael. Leo. Yeah, take it off. It's probably fine.
Oh.
And go.
Yegadav Yekadash Shemei Rabbah
Amen.
Ve'amad Divrahute Ve'amlich Malhute Bechayachon Uvyom Echon Uchayedeho Be'Yisrael Bagala Ubizman Kariv Ve'imiru Amen Yehei Shemei Rabbah Embarah Le'olam Ulamei Almayah Yibarach V'yitabach V'yipar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yitaleh V'yithala Shemei Dikudisha Brichichu Le'elim Kohol Birchata V'shirata Tush B'chata B'nechemata Damiran Ba'alma V'miru Amen.
Continue with Baruch Hu, our call to prayer, page 28. Just read.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hambarach, Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever. Praised be Adonai, to whom praise is due, now and forever.
Baruch Hu. Oh. Sorry. I make up the order and then I forget. 1, 2, 3. Yada dai dai dai, 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 yada dai dai dai. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Do you understand? Am I awake? Am I aware? Baruch Hu Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Le'olam Va'ed. Yada dai dai dai, 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 yada dai dai dai.
Last three lines in the Hebrew, page 30, El Chai V'Kayam.
El Chai V'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai,
Baruch Shemo.
Hamarim
Page 34 and 35, Shema Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
You may be seated. Page 37. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you are tired or you are rested. Let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gates. They are reminders to do all of my mitzvot, so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai, your God, who led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai, your God. Last paragraph, page 36, Leman Tizkuru.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Turn to page 40 for our Song of Freedom, Mi Chamocha.
Adonai, mi kamocha, neder b'hakodesh, nora tehilot, oseh feleh. Malechutecha ra'u banecha, חוקי הים, לפני משה ומרים. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 כי יפד אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני,
Baruch Shemo.
גאל ישראל.
Amen. Page 43. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will.
Last 6 lines on page 42. O shmor tzetenu voenu l'chaim ulshalom me'ata ve'ad olam baruch ata Adonai haporeis sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim.
Shabbat gives us the opportunity each week to pause, to take a breath, to reconnect with our deepest selves, with our community, with the Holy One. We give thanks for that blessing. Join in Vishamru, page 44.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasod et HaShabbat L'dodotam berit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasod et HaShabbat L'dodotam berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael Oti leolam, oti leolam, oti leolam. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat laso et HaShabbat l'dorotam berit olam.
Sheishet yamim עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ.
שמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. שמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Page 46, as we move into our Amidah this evening, we'll sing the opening line there together, and then we will have a silent Amidah, a little quiet time, either for the words of the Siddur, the following pages, or for the words of your heart. Probably a little shorter time than we usually have, and then there'll be a contribution from Dr. Randy Polivoy, so you can continue on your own as music continues and other things. I invite you to rise if you're able.
Oh, Shah, oh, Shah. Oh, Shah, oh, Shah, oh, Shah, oh, Adonai, Sefatai Tiftach, Ufi Agi, Tehilatecha, Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise.
We continue silently.
Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Shabbat Shalom. I'm not going to say much in the interest of saving time here, other than the piece I'm going to be playing has a very prayerful, spiritual quality to it. It's from the classical repertoire. The composer is Franz Schubert, who was not Jewish, had very little to do with Judaism, but it's just a wonderful piece to program after the silent meditation, and I've cut it drastically just to save some time. So this is a piece called Impromptu.
Thank you, Dr. Pulavoy. We turn our thoughts at this time to all of those in our life and in our community who are in need of healing, of body, of mind, of spirit. So we're going to turn to page 253. And for those of you at home, feel free to share with others who are online the names of those who you're thinking about in the chat. Mishuberach.
Holy One, bless our mothers, bless our fathers from ancient days, bless and heal those in our hearts, and hear our prayer as we say their names. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimaleh Rachamim Aleihem Lehachzikam Urape Otam Ve'yishlach lahem Refuah Shlema Refuat HaNefesh, Refuat HaGuf, B'toch Sha'ar Cholei Yisrael. Oh, bless and heal those in our hearts, and hear our prayer as we say their name.
We ask for blessings upon Rebecca Gilman, Hannah Fields Austin, Sue Topak, Rosin Lefkowitz, Helen Weinfeld, Pam Poliakoff, Connie Shapiro, Kathy Blumenfeld, Caitlin Antrim, Kathy Brewster, Jennifer Rudin, Marion Snyders, Brad Holland, Meg Silton, Serena Postal, Bobby Kay, Marilyn Freeman, Robert Strober, Marilyn Lubarsky, Ellery Einstein, Patricia Kramer, Joan Morse, Nomi Kravitz, Craig Sachs, Simon Saul, Blair Pollock, Myra White, Lori Snyder, Jeremy Knoller, Charity Raisaday, Mike Klein, Lily Morrison, Richard Handley, Barbara Fass, Joel Beasy, Burton Gershman, Carol Berlant, Janet Barong, Paula Steinbach, David Bush, Howard Bush, Dana Sundin, Lawson Spicer, Mark Fenton, Gloria Foster, Rita Warshaw, Ira Quatcher, Robert Gerard, Brian Safer, and
Kadosh Baruch Yimalei Rachamim Aleihem. Oh, bless and heal those in our hearts, and hear our prayer as we say their names.
So it's the first Shabbat in June. If you have a June birthday, I'm going to invite you to gather toward the center aisle. Any June birthdays? I know there are at least a few in the congregation. There we go. Okay, a few more. And I need a few people to just to hold a birthday canopy. Neil's doing it by himself right now. I need another person or two to help out. You can come out, Mari. You helped last time, I think. Whoever else. And birthdays gather in the aisle, and we will invite you. We'll sing you up. Here we go.
Yom Huledet Sameach, 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 Yom Huledet Sameach.
Happy birthday. We wish you not only a happy birthday, but a good year, a year of health and of blessing, a year of connection to friends and community, a year of growth of spirit, and a year of healing for us and for our world. And we offer to all of you a blessing of our tradition.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
God bless you and may God keep you.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka.
God's light shine into you and through you to others, and may God always be compassionate unto you.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
May God and all that is good be present for you in your life. May you find shalom, wholeness, and peace in your heart, in your family, in your community, and may you join with others to bring our world closer to wholeness and peace, and say together,
Amen.
and in a continuing joint venture with Mark Feynman, even when they live in the oceanside. Now, we have pencils that say happy birthday on them, or chocolate made by Mark Feynman. So I'll give those to you, and then we'll sing you out.
Yom Hu Ledet Sameach. Everybody. Yom Hu Ledet Sameach. Yom Hu Ledet Sameach. Yom Hu Ledet Sameach. Yom Hu Ledet Sameach. See y'all next year. Yom Hu Ledet Sameach.
Hopefully sooner.
Yom
the next
Huledet Sameach. What I meant is we'll see you as birthdays next year, same time, be here. Amen.
As we move into inviting Dr. Zalkowitz to share with us on the Bima, I'd like to first invite Karen Salter-Moss, and I'd like to just say Mazal Tov to Karen and the whole family, as Karen's daughter Michaela got married this last weekend, and it was wonderful. So, and Karen.
Yeah, well, I want to thank the Rabbi and Cantor for an amazing ceremony. It was, I don't know, maybe it's because it was my daughter's ceremony, but I thought it was phenomenal. Anyway, about Brenda Rosenfeld. In 2014, when longtime TBI member Brenda Rosenfeld died, more than 200 friends and family members established a fund in her memory with the intent of honoring this remarkable woman in a way we knew would celebrate things that truly mattered to Brenda, learning about politics, the arts, music, the changing Jewish world, and especially social justice. Brenda was committed to action in her career with the Los Angeles Department of Public Social Services, in her political lobbying, in her constant search for the most interesting cuisine in LA, and even in how she jumped into grandparenting. Brenda was a model of energy, enthusiasm, and dedication. But it was through her active volunteerism at Temple Beth Israel that Brenda left a mark on so many in this community. She chaired the membership community in the late 1970s. Later, she took a lead with social action and Ways and Means. She served on the board, helped manage our auctions, our progressive dinners, our scholar in residence weekends, and many art and music events. After Brenda retired, she volunteered in the Temple office, always answering the phone with a gracious, "How can I help you?" attitude. Brenda was a friend to many of us here tonight. She would tell us how fabulous it is that this series is in her name and it continues to bring scholars like Rabbi Tali Zelkowitz, people who, like Brenda, truly care about Tikkun Olam, the healing of the world. We miss Brenda and David too, but on an evening like this, we know how much her spirit lives on.
And now to introduce our scholar for this evening, Diane Schuster. Just watch out for chords. Just watch out for chords, I said, but you already made it. So
Shabbat Shalom. Nearly 25 years ago, I was invited to teach a class on human development to students at Hebrew Union College in Los Angeles. I still have the course outline and my teaching notes from that class, and I know I talked then, as I still do now, about how good teachers begin with the needs of the learners in mind. What I most remember from that semester, though, is that when the students were talking about things they themselves needed to learn, for some reason I mentioned that I didn't know how to lift a Torah. Maybe I've got the details wrong, but what I know for sure is that one of the rabbinical students in the class said, "I can teach you that," and proceeded to show me how to bend my knees in order to support the scrolls that were almost as large as I was. That student was our speaker this evening, Tali Zelkowitz. Not only was Tali my student and my teacher in the late 1990s, she was someone Jack and I counseled when she decided after rabbinic ordination to pursue a doctorate in education at New York University. And she was a participant at Jewish education research conferences I helped plan in the early 2000s. And she later became a faculty colleague of mine at HUC LA, where we both taught about Jewish identity in the Rhea Hirsch School of Education. I remember her introducing me to the idea of backwards design, the approach of first deciding what you as the teacher want the people to learn, and then working backwards from that desired outcome to figure out how you're going to help them get the point. And then 3 years ago, when I heard that Tali had moved on from her position as head of school at the Columbus Jewish Day School to become director of curriculum and research at the Wexner Foundation, I reached out to her to bring her insights about adult Jewish learning to a book project I was directing for Brandeis University. I am particularly thrilled that her co-authored chapter about how Jewish adults engage in discourse about controversial topics is part of a volume that will be published in about 2 weeks. For those of you who may not know, the Wexner Foundation is a Columbus, Ohio-based organization that develops and inspires leaders throughout the Jewish community. The Foundation's educational programs have transformed Jewish communal leadership in dozens of cities in the US and Israel, and Tali has become the key person who designs and evaluates what goes on educationally in Wexner's various initiatives, In her role, she sits with some of the brightest and most creative leaders in the Jewish world, striving to get a handle on current issues, hot topics, and the many ways Jews today manage the tensions that are produced by being part of and apart from modern life. I wish I could say that the idea to bring Tali to be our Brenda Rosenfeld Scholar and to be part of TBI's Shavuot celebration this weekend came from me. But the truth is that when Tali was still teaching at HUC, her close friend Jonathan Kupetz invited her to speak here at our congregation. Unfortunately, on the Shabbat she was scheduled to be here, Tali came down with the flu and had to cancel at the last minute. But Jonathan assured her that there would be another opportunity to share her wisdom with the TBI community. And so finally, after at least a dozen-year delay, we are able to make good on that invitation and to welcome her to our Bima. It is with great pleasure that on behalf of the Brenda Rosenfeld Scholars Committee, I introduce Rabbi Dr. Tali Zelkowitz to Temple Beth Israel, where we're all eager to hear what she means by keeping the cement wet, a toolkit for change in a time of uncertainty.
Shabbat Shalom. Okay, but you can't listen to this as if you've been waiting for it for 12 years. This is such an honor, both to be invited in honor of the Brenda Rosenfeld Scholar Weekend, whose values and commitments to leadership, which I'm going to be talking a lot about tonight, are very close to my own heart. And it's also a real treat to be back here, actually in Southern California for the first time in 6 years with my whole family, who are all here with me, my husband Benny and Gavi and Asher. So it's really a treat to have bring your family to work day, to shul day. Every shul should be that. Anyway. There's this song that has become a sort of soundtrack in my mind during COVID. Maybe you know it. It's a David Bowie song. It's called Changes. And the refrain has become, like I said, this soundtrack of COVID for me over the past couple years. I'm going to play just the refrain for you, and we'll get into what it means to keep the cement wet. Since the pandemic started, uncertainty has felt like one of the only constants. We've been wandering through the wilderness. Just like the book of Torah we started reading this week, Bamidbar, which literally means through the wilderness, says, Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, and God said to Moshe, Bamidbar Sinai, in the Sinai wilderness, Bohel Moed lemor, in the tent of meeting, and he said, and I take a little interpretive license here, he said to him, Adonai spoke to Moses, and he said, every single one of you will be forced to change, to turn and face the strange. I'm not sure exactly what Bowie meant by not being able to trace time. I think about that a lot. But for me, I have to tell you, it captures how impossible it feels to keep track of how long it's been since anything during COVID. Early on in the pandemic, a colleague of mine, Ruthie Warshenbrat, just threw her hands up one day at work and said, I don't know how long it's been since like anything, so I'm just going to say now or a time that wasn't now. Those were the only two times. So it's really helpful, actually, a time that wasn't now. So at a time that wasn't now, quite suddenly, so much of our entire landscape of our long-standing, accepted, normative practices became wet cement. We've all experienced unfathomable, truly unfathomable, unprecedented in our lifetime, acceleration of the reimagining of Jewish life. What anchors us, though? What limits us? And what's yet to be imagined? Every community, every workplace, every school, every shul, every family, every individual has needed and also gets to answer this for themselves. For example, what if I asked you to imagine the first change that comes to mind that you've experienced here in your TBI community? What's the first change that's occurred in your community over the past 2 years that comes to mind? Just think about it in your head for a moment. Give me a thumbs up if you can think of one. One's come to mind. All got a change. One to change it? Okay. Now, next step, reflect on how much loss or gain has been associated with that change that came to mind. Was there gain involved? Or was there some loss? Or was it some combination of both? And now I'm going to ask us to take out our armometers. Everybody has an armometer, looks like this. And I want you to actually show me how much loss or gain. So this is huge gain, maximum gain. This is huge loss, right? No gain, loss. And some combination is in the middle. So show me now, loss, gain, something in the middle. I'm looking around and I'm seeing a huge combination of some mix of loss and gain, in some cases more loss. I have to tell you, unless I'd missed someone, I didn't see anybody show net gain total. You did? There was a few? Sorry? That there was only gain. Everyone experienced some mix of, there was some gain and some loss. This COVID pandemic is devastating in so many ways that it will, I believe, take some time to really understand even what's happened to us, to mourn the losses, and hopefully to heal. Really, so much has been lost. But my question tonight is, has it all been lost? Have there been any benefits in the changes, in being yanked out of autopilot, being immersed into wet cement? For better or for worse, has any of it been for better? Are there new relevancies, new opportunities that grow out of these last 2 years? And specifically what I wonder, like a lot, I wonder this, now that we've been forced to go places we never imagined we'd go, how is it that we might continue to boldly go where we've never been, but this time on purpose? That would require us to keep the cement wet, which is what I basically do for a living at the Wexner Foundation now. And the foundation has been in the business, the change business, for 40 years. We help, as Diane said, people manage and lead change, both when it's forced upon us and when we choose it on purpose. Some people choose change on purpose. I get to help support our 11 program directors create, revise, and assess how it is that we teach and learn about change so that they can then take our cohorts of volunteer leaders and professionals, both in North America and in Israel, on these multi-year learning journeys of leadership development that ideally, if we're doing our job right, transform the way they think about change. And I understand you've all been on quite a journey of change here at TBI. I learned, for example, that you're now offering some programming only online, which probably never would have happened before COVID, I imagine. Some in hybrid formats. You began a challah delivery, you began check-in calls, you began experimenting with collaborative models of religious school and with adult education. And then, of course, there's tefillah. Your last 3 high holidays have been online, and now together with the rest of North America and probably the world, we're wondering what it might mean that some people are coming back in person and some people are choosing to remain online. What does this hybrid existence mean for tefillah? That is a whole lot of change. And for sure, it's just a small glimpse of the total changes you've been all managing and leading, not only at Temple, but at work, home, with family members, and your personal lives. So what I want to suggest to us all tonight is that we're all in the change business. At the Wexner Foundation, we found ourselves turning our own leadership tools inward like never before, with constant reminders that leadership is an activity, not a role that only some people hold. Specifically, we use this definition for what leadership is. We believe that leadership is the activity of holding people through change, holding people through a sustained period of disequilibrium, during which you together with your team, with your community, with your staff, with your family, identify what cultural DNA, who you want to be, to keep or discard, to invent or discover, that will ultimately enable your group to thrive anew. That's what we think of as leadership. Raise your hand proudly if you've held anyone through change these past 2 years. Thank you. It could be family members, it could be colleagues, coworkers, employees, that you've held through flux, through conflict, through confusion, through tension, and through loss these past 2 years. Now, show us with a raise of hand if someone held you through a sustained period of disequilibrium in the past 2 years. If you haven't yet, you might make a point to thank them. Because if they're here tonight, turn and say thank you. Because no leader survives, let alone succeeds, at change without being held themselves. It's really a fact. And as you can see, being held is still only a part of it. Leadership is about identifying who you are, who you want and don't want to be. And then you have to help foster this new cultural identity of who you want to become, emerge and thrive. That's a lot. This change stuff is deep, infinitely complex, volatile, charged, exhausting, and actually ultimately dangerous work. And adaptive leadership is the field that the Wexner Foundation turns to, and we've partnered with them for the past 2 decades to learn about change. And they talk about it constantly as surviving the dangers. And it's why we lose many leaders, great people, and why many leaders lose themselves, because of the dangers of change. Luckily, we have tools that can help us remain alive and thriving, tools that can help us keep adaptable, able to respond to the conditions around us, but also tools to be able to be adaptive, to actually initiate, cause change on purpose, and to create and author new conditions around us, to be adaptable and adaptive. And it turns out some of the things in these change toolkits have proved powerfully adaptive during COVID, and some not so much. You may know which are which. I'm hoping that more and more coming into this endemic phase of COVID that we're able to take time and get up and really reflect on which tools have been which for us, because I've also watched many learn that they've been schlepping around some tools that actually don't really serve a purpose anymore at all, and maybe never even did. So whenever we can expand our repertoire of tools for facing, naming, managing, leading change, I truly believe it liberates us and empowers us just a little more to realize the life we want to live and the world that we want to live in, which sounds a little like something I'm trying to remember the name of the person in honor of whom this weekend is. Brenda Rosenfeld, something she would have said. That the kind of world we want to live in and the life we want to live. So I've brought these 4 tools with me today, and I hope that maybe one or more of them can be this empowerment for you. The first tool is what a leadership researcher and educator maybe you've heard of named Brene Brown, who's gone viral, recently referred to as a staircase. Okay, so that's my staircase. This staircase is a way for us to get up and out of the fast-paced, busy commotion of our daily work that happens on what is called the metaphorical dance floor. Down here with this guy who's right in our face, and we can see the energy and the activity, and we're focused on pretty much one person, and the other things are kind of in the background. But the staircase helps us get up to the balcony. And these metaphors also come right out of adaptive leadership. Now, here's the question. We know that people spend most of the time, well, where do you think they spend most of their time? On the balcony or the dance floor? You call it out. Dance floor, the vast majority. And why do we do that? It literally, you quoted from the book, is where the action is. It's where the friction, the noise, the tension, the systemic activity are occurring. Not only that, it's actually where the work gets done. The work of change gets done on the dance floor, not on the balcony. But here's the catch. When you're on the dance floor, you can't see the dance floor, right? So how can we do great work on the dance floor if we can't see the full picture? We can't see the ecosystem. We can't see how things are connected. It's only from the balcony that we're able to diagnose early and often and accurately what the challenges we're facing are. So here's how this played out. For example, when the pandemic hit, our entire Wexner model of immersive, pluralistic, face-to-face learning was tested in unprecedented ways. It was true for many people, right? Like so many others, we didn't know if our model could survive being mediated by Zoom. We literally didn't know if we could deliver our signature programming. Were we done? Was this nice run, 40 years? And here's what I was hearing on the dance floor from our program directors. Tully, digital teaching tools. For the love of God, please give me online teaching tools. Like Answer Garden, Mentimeter, Poll Everywhere, Padlet, Mural, Google Slides, Flipgrid, Loom, Zoom polls, Thinklet, Wakelet, on and on and on. And the directors didn't have time to vet all of them or figure out which did which. Understandably, they just wanted someone to tell them what to use, how to use them, so they could just go design and lead their first ever online leadership institute in like 5 minutes. Really, that's how it felt. The pressure was palpable. But was giving them this giant spreadsheet of digital apps and links to tutorials really what they needed? Was this challenge that they were facing really about finding the right resources? Something didn't feel right. A lot of this pressure and anxiety and tension that filled the dance floor made it scary to walk away from the dance floor, because that's where all the action was, like Paul said. I dared to inch off the dance floor for a moment, just away from the noise for a moment, and I told our president, my boss, that if I was going to be able to hold our team through this massive shift in educational practice, that quick fixes would ultimately hurt us more than help us. To be sure, our folks needed some resources, and they needed them quickly, but that was really a part and not the whole of our response to the challenge. We also needed to get up to the balcony. She said, go, do what you need to do. Thank God. And among other things, I found an educational technology coach who talked us through some very big picture dilemmas and questions about our educational philosophy, because it can feel inefficient and scary to leave that dance floor. But it was only from the balcony that we were able to ensure that whatever new online learning practices and tools we used, I don't care if it's Wakelet or Padlet or Mural, what we used to adopt were informed by our values and beliefs and not the other way around. So that means we needed a way of figuring out what kind of challenge we're actually dealing with. Because if you misdiagnose the problem, you'll misdiagnose how to manage or solve it. Enter tool number 2, what I like to call the challenge diagnoser. How fun would that be to actually have that? What is the problem here? Sometimes you just sense it and it's ambiguous, but you can't name it. So the challenge diagnoser will help us diagnose at least one of 2 kinds of challenges that adaptive leadership teaches is critical in successful leadership. And the important thing here is to distinguish between technical challenges, which we had about a half hour's worth before shul tonight, getting all of this to work. And thanks to Paul, we went through it. And actually, adaptive leadership tells us that 90% of leadership is technical challenges. Well, thank God, because those things have really actually known solutions. Either someone or some resource or some thing in the world already exists that can help us solve that, right? It's some kind of plug-in of some sort. Having a shortage of digital apps at your disposal is a technical problem. On the other hand, figuring out how to deliver immersive, open, trusting teaching and learning online in ways that felt true to our 40-year-old mission and vision, that's an adaptive challenge. That's a challenge about who we are, what our soul is, what our DNA is, what our educational philosophy is about, and what's mission aligned. And so it always makes me think of the game Bananagrams. Does anyone know Bananagrams? Okay. It's like Scrabble, only totally different, because Scrabble has a board where you put the tiles on, and there's only so many places you can put them on, right? There's rules, and it's sort of containing. Bananagrams is this amazing game where they keep throwing new tiles at you, and you have to keep deconstructing the grids you create because you're constantly taking two new tiles, taking it apart, putting it back together again. And so the other 10% are these unclear, ambiguous adaptive challenges for which solutions haven't been invented yet. At least 10%, and during COVID, I'm guessing it's upwards of like 30 or 40%, which is what's so exhausting, I think, about COVID. There's no shortcut through the learning and the experimenting that are needed to address an adaptive challenge successfully. So it's like Bananagrams, where you have to, but also get to, take everything apart and put it back together again, and again, and again, and again. Every time new tiles come your way, you need to adjust for the new reality, these new pieces, to disrupt part or whole of the system that you just took time to invest in and rebuild it. My mother is an incredible crossword puzzle doer, New York Times crossword puzzle. She loves playing Bananagrams, but because she won't deconstruct the tile that she's so beautifully proud of, she can't play Bananagrams because she refuses to take it apart. These ever-changing realities are coming at you all the time. So the trick to Bananagrams and to adaptive leadership, to mix metaphors, is to keep the cement wet. To be able to say, I love what I just created, but something just changed. I got two more tiles. I've got to adjust part or even the whole thing and take it apart again. That's not for the faint of heart. Because the obstacle to technical challenges, as we just heard, is actually resources. Okay, digital apps, different furniture, moving structure around, a fidget, expert knowledge or information, some money, a Band-Aid, a doggy door, a well-timed hug. Those are all examples of technical solutions I've used at some point or another during COVID. They can all do the trick sometimes. So what do you think the key obstacle is to solving adaptive challenges? If resources is the key obstacle to technical challenges, what makes it hard to take apart your Bananagrams board every single time? Courage, I heard someone say. Security? Pride? Necessity? An absence of vision? So all of the things that you've said play in to what adaptive leadership teaches us is the main obstacle. Loss, specifically the fear of loss. That's the obstacle to adaptive leadership, which is why we need tool number 3, which is managing loss. Now, all of a sudden, as leaders, we're not only doing all these other things, we're now grief counselors. We're now thinking about what kinds of losses are at stake. What's holding people back? What are the obstacles? I'm sure all of you could generate this list and maybe painfully have. Here are the most common kinds of losses we experience in changing situations. You listed a few already. Loss of stability, loss of power, loss of competence, loss of control, knowledge, tradition or rituals, time, status, reputation, relevance, loyalty, identity, a job, money or wealth, loss of community, loss of security, and ultimately a loss of life. All of those things are at risk in changing situations. So it turns out that people fear, when people don't actually fear change per se, It's loss that scares us. But where do you even start to manage and hold people's loss? We're not all professional grief counselors. The first step is you don't ignore it. You actually go looking for it. You acknowledge it, you name it, you honor it, you even remember it. In short, you help people grieve it. Because a huge part, for example, of our Wexner work is helping leaders develop the capacity to find out the losses that are at stake in a changing situation. Another way to put it is you go looking for the ouch. It's scary and uncomfortable, but it's the only thing that lets you be open to change. There is such a thing as bad grief that's not productive. But I think I've seen that there's also such a thing as good grief. And that is where our work comes in as leaders, either at home or at work as we do our leadership work. And it puts us in this grief counseling business. If only now we knew where to turn for a rich repertoire of ways and names to manage and honor and grieve loss. What tradition, pray tell, does grief really well? Does anyone know of a religion that is really smart and wise? No? That's what I thought. Us. We do this. Judaism has this rich social technology for managing and processing loss. I knew this. But I knew it as a rabbi, I knew it as a sociologist, I knew it as a Jewish educator, but here's the funny thing this year. It took a Christian colleague from Germany named Michael Kohler, who is one of the leading experts in adaptive leadership worldwide today, to urge me to make this connection explicit. He said, Tali, it's all there. The more I work with my Jewish colleagues, you need to connect these dots between managing loss and adaptive leadership and the wisdom that Judaism's sitting on. So this year I actually tried it out, and I worked with a group of Jewish educational leaders actually in the Bay Area. It was all virtual, at an organization called Jewish Learning Works. And we explored losses that their staff and communities were facing in these ways of going and looking for the ouch. And this is what we played with. We found that Judaism teaches us to schedule grieving. Shiva, Shloshim, during the year. What are the ways we could be marking losses that people experience in changing situations? By scheduling grieving. Judaism also teaches us that it gives us, that we have a tangible way of expressing grief and anger, right? We rip clothes or a ribbon. What are some tangible, this is the one, the educators loved working with this one. It was very tactile and concrete and something that's missing in change work that tends to be abstract and very linguistic, where it's a lot of words, but what are we actually doing to grieve those losses? Similarly, Judaism helps us really face the loss directly, right? We shovel the earth into the grave. We touch it, we smell it, we feel it. These were very, very powerful connections that, as leaders, we don't necessarily connect these dots, like I said. Another way we realize that Judaism helps us grieve is by reciting shared texts, things that are scripted that we say together. Similarly, but with a little bit different, there's also texts that come from us, stories that we tell. Through words and stories, we can literally remember, put together the loss. And finally, we thought about how Judaism provides us with the physical ways to honor and revisit whom or what we've lost. So when COVID hit, our directors lost a sense of competence, a sense of control, a sense of knowledge, confidence, someone mentioned confidence, and they lost time. Anxiety went through the roof. That was what was holding them back from being able to take apart their bananagrams tiles. Plus, that oh-so-naive 2019 self of ours that all wondered, but what if we only need to do this once? I mean, is it really worth time and energy? But we grieved the director's losses by naming all the things that had worked and all the things that felt so great and so tried and true for so long. We asked, what can be saved? What could still work? And that allowed us to ask which of those beloved practices are essential to our work and which may not be. Hence, you open the door to ask what can be changed. Grieving the losses allows us to face and sometimes even embrace change. So we've got the staircase, we've got the diagnoser, we're grief counselors. Seriously, can any one person do all of this? Is this realistic to expect of any leader? It's so much. It's like superhuman. I agree. I actually think that's impossible. No leader can carry it all. And I actually wish the rest of the world would realize that no leaders can carry it all. It's not realistic. Which leads us to the fourth and final tool I wanted to bring you guys this evening. And that is a tool that's probably the most grossly underused and one of the most valuable. And I will call it the weight sharer. Think about how many people expect their leaders to rescue them. I hired you to do this. I pay you. This is what you're there for, right? And then think about how many leaders desperately want to deliver on that expectation and show their people that they are the leader you can trust in and believe in. It was really hard for me to say to my team during COVID, I can't give you the answers. I don't know how to get us through COVID. Yes, I'm an educator. Yes, I do this and this, and you hired me to do this. This is an adaptive challenge. We don't have a solution for this yet. We're gonna have to go through this together, guys. It was really hard. It felt like failing them. And now you can imagine, with the combination of expectations and pressures and hopes that one can deliver, how hard it is for leaders to resist the immense pressure, to think they can somehow take problems off of other people's shoulders, and how hard it is for leaders to say, especially in the heat of the disequilibrium moment, I can't do this alone. Hey, why am I the only one stressing about this problem when it affects all of us? Or how hard it is to say, folks, I actually don't have what it takes to solve this problem. And as a leader, it is my responsibility to tell you that. It is at once one of the hardest and most important things a leader can do, and it is called in adaptive leadership terms, giving back the work, which can sound like shirking, right? Sounds like you're just hiding behind that weight. But actually, it's an act of tremendous leadership, because what you're doing is giving back to the work, to the people to whom it actually belongs, the people who share the problem. All of us should be responsible for it. Everyone who's impacted by the problem. Okay? There's proof right there, proof text from Bamidbar. Moshe said, they're saying to him, okay, now what? And he says, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I've done all this, and now you guys, come on, we're in this together. If they don't share the problem, they can't share the solutions. And then you're not actually leading. You're not leading change, and you're not leading because nobody's with you. It's similar to what I say as an educator. You can teach all day long without people learning. A lot of people actually find it annoying sometimes that there's learners in the room who are trying to ask questions and things like, I just want to teach. I just want to march through content, and it's a different relationship when you're doing the dance with learners and teachers. So if you want to make space for leadership, you have to give back the work. Having people turn to you for answers instead of taking risks or working with others, or realize that others are more qualified to handle the work of a particular challenge, if you notice any of those things happening, that you are overwhelmed by a challenge, or that you're only one working on a challenge, red flag that it's time to give back the work. And it occurs to me that one of the most vivid, dramatic, and bumpy stories of leadership survival is in that same book of Bowie, Bamidbar, the book of changes. And Bamidbar, as I said, actually means through the wilderness. And throughout the book, Moshe and Israel journey through this uncharted terrain, unknown solutions, tons of adaptive problems, very few technical ones, and they're working to survive with all these things thrown at them. And at the same time, Moses is working to be adaptive. He's trying to actually cause change. He's not just trying to be adaptable. He's actually leading and orchestrating change in order to identify, ultimately, what cultural DNA to keep or discard as Israelites, what they want to invent or discover that would enable their group, the people of Israel, to thrive anew. That's what's going on in the book of Bamidbar, the very definition of adaptive leadership. Right up until the end, Moshe was working to keep the cement wet and help his people question their old ways and grieve the ones that weren't serving them from Egypt, never losing sight of the larger project of forming a new identity of Israel with their own distinctive core norms and values. And in life and in leadership, we so often find ourselves bamidbar, wandering through what feels like a lonely and dangerous wilderness. But when we have the courage to turn and face the strange directly and together, then despair can become hope. Resentment, fear, and isolation can all give way to partnership, agency, and curiosity. I hope that by continuing to carefully hold one another through change and its inevitable losses, that we will learn to see abundant, life-giving waters amidst our wilderness as we journey together towards ever stronger, wiser, kinder places. Shabbat Shalom.
We have just a few minutes, but if people have questions, I'll look at my phone and see if there's questions. Any questions? Claudia? Got it? Okay, good. Any questions from people out here or things that you'd like to have Tali explicate that you weren't clear on as we went through? No questions? What about online? So clear. Any questions? Yes.
So you spoke a lot about leadership as if it's sort of one role, and I'm curious in your experience, to what extent have you found that to differentiate amongst your team? What does the differentiation look like? Because, I mean, obviously there's also different styles of leadership to the table. So how do you bring that to this question of leadership?
Okay, I'm going to try to summarize that question. You talked about leadership basically as a role, but...
Can I interrupt right there? Actually, I specifically talked about it as an activity and not a role, if that makes a difference. Doesn't make a difference, okay. Sure. It sounds like when you talk about you asked me, how does differentiation play out? Are you talking about different skill sets and different relationships, different approaches to challenges? So it's huge, huge. That there's, and another reason why it's important to give back the work, because otherwise you've got one person with one constellation of skills and attitudes and personality and limits and blind spots. So the great example of this is the Myers-Briggs. Have you ever heard of? So there's all these huge family of personality indexes, and basically they all are trying to say, look, we're all strong and weak in different ways. And so if you're asking how this fits into leadership, I think it's absolutely necessary to acknowledge that you've got a rainbow of talents and blind spots, and to try to really acknowledge both sides of that on your team.
Yeah, I'd follow up and ask, do you think in this recent massive tsunami of changes that we've experienced, that your personal team started to grow more aware of those differences?
So I've noticed that it became sort of a magnifying glass, like who you were before is only now more so. Everybody became more of who they were, and it was clear. I think crisis in general does that. You see kind of the true self come through. And I think there was a terrible phrase that unfortunately has some truth. Compassion fatigue. You heard this phrase now during COVID, and I think what we need more of is this understanding and a sense of kindness that really we're all shining through here in our worst and best, and we've got to really be accepting and have some, at least some cushion and some buffer for when we slip and fall, and it's okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Karen. Karen Kupin.
So I was really struck when you were talking about the giving back of the work and how your team must have taken that. And as a leader, how difficult that must be to say those words. It seems to me that like the real leadership is in communicating and giving back the work in a way that is not, doesn't instill further fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts, suggestions in terms of how you communicate that, obviously authentically,
Right.
non-threateningly?
Mm-hmm. Right.
How could you summarize that?
Can I try?
Yeah.
Here's what I hear Karen asking. It's such a good question. She's like, how do we message, I'm giving back the work, without it sounding like I'm dumping this back on you, I can't do this, okay? How do we message this in gracious and effective ways so that it is heard as compelling, that it's an invitation and not a, oh, I'm exasperated, I'm done with you. And I think that's what was going on in Moshe in that picture, right? That's probably not the way to give back the work. And Moshe hit the rock. That's not the way to give back the work, right? We actually could do a whole drush on this. But yes, and there are actually like several chapters of adaptive leadership books on managing, on how to give back the work. In short, I would say if I had to summarize the wisdom on it, I would say it's about inviting learners into an experiment. Guys, who thinks it's about calibrating reality? Who thinks everything is working right now, right? One of the reasons why you have to give back the work at all is because you feel you're the only one looking at a situation in a certain way and you're panicked. You've got alarms going off and everybody else is like waiting. What's she gonna do? And you need to like pop that bubble and figure out how to say, I can't have this, I'm carrying it all. I need you to schlep some of this weight. And if all of us together can do it, and so it's about, I think, breaking down perspectives. People, they're all on their own dance floors. How can you help invite them all up to the balcony to have a shared perspective? And then you can calibrate reality, which is actually one of the hardest things to do in America right now. We're having troubles with that. And from there, say, okay, if this is what we're seeing, now what? And now we're sort of all seeing the same thing. Does that begin to get it? Okay. Thanks for the question. There was one back there, too. Okay.
Karen, you go back there. Another Karen. Go ahead.
Before COVID, a lot of our group work, committees and everything were on schedules or timelines. How do you think about it now? It seems to me that schedules and timelines have all just kind of dissipated because circumstances change from day to day, week to week, month to month. How can we stay, or should we even look at timelines as being necessary?
The question was, before COVID, we actually had the audacity to think we could work on timelines and strategize and have schedules with right due dates along the way. And now what do we do now where we feel like we're constantly getting blindsided and our timelines are getting thrown out the window? So this is enormous change. I think this is one of the great losses that we're working to grieve, because I think one of the number one words, if you do a Google search like about COVID, is pivot. You guys heard the pivot thing? I mean, we have like pivot fatigue at this point. It's the bananagrams thing. No, I don't want to put it back together again, right? So I think that the timeline thing is about, part of it is a buffer and having compassion for when things go wrong. It's not failure. That's a big piece, building that into the culture anew and saying, we don't have this control anymore. We just don't. And part of it is maybe rethinking time and how we move through, thinking of Bowie, right? We can't trace time. Walking through the steps of a project, it has to look different, right? When we build towards something. I don't know, actually, I don't know the answer. I certainly don't have a formula. You're asking, it's an adaptive challenge to a technical question, actually. So I'd love to think more with you about that, but I second and kind of underline the tomorrow night, apparently, we're going to be with my session. Oh, we can continue this conversation tomorrow. I think that we have a segue. Should I say a word about the program tomorrow night? Is that okay? So anyone who's interested, I would love, thank you for the question, all the questions. It was wonderful. I love questions. Tomorrow night, I'm actually going to be inviting everyone to play with me in a jungle gym and think about what it means to play with our Judaism in a jungle gym, and when and where and under what circumstances our Jewish spaces become more like China shops. And I use those metaphors. It comes out of research that I did over the years, and I'm going to make this connection, which I've never made before, but had the opportunity, thanks to this weekend, to connect it to the holiday of Shavuot, and how Shavuot is about standing again at Sinai, and every time we stand at Sinai, we figure out what are our connections to this thing called Judaism, and how durable or fragile are they?
So I'd like to thank Tali, first of all, for being with us on this Shabbat, and for being a dear, 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 dear friend since 1997, when we met at Camp Newman in the summer of 1997, and have continued to be good friends ever since. Changes bring new opportunities and loss. They moved to Columbus. That was a big loss for us, and created new opportunities as well for Tali and Benny and their family, and an opportunity for you to be here with us today, and we're incredibly, incredibly grateful. So thank you very much, and we have the opportunity, as Tali said, to continue to learn together tomorrow evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we are going to move toward the end of our service. Before we do, I want to make a couple of other just quick comments. Yesterday, just yesterday, was the 50th anniversary of the ordination of Sally Priesand, who was the first woman ordained. Probably not ever. We have Regina Jonas and et cetera, but in the United States, in modern times in the United States, and of course, was the beginning of really shaping and changing Jewish life in so many ways, not just for women, but for all of us, because of the voices that came into Jewish life that we didn't hear before, and the new perspectives, because we all stand at Sinai in a little different way, as we will talk about tomorrow. When I came to TBI a really long time ago now, crazy actually, almost 19 years ago, Mira Weller, who's here, was a madracha in our religious school, had become bat mitzvah here with Rabbi Levine, and he had taken and worked with Arava, and was connected in our synagogue. And when she left from here and was doing other work, Rabbi Morley Feinstein, may his memory be a blessing, from University Synagogue in Los Angeles, took Mira under his wing, and Mira was just ordained rabbi at HUC in LA, and is home for a few days with her dad, Mark. And Mark was one of the original members of the shul band, although Mark, you didn't last very long in the band, but
too many notes, he said.
But and Mira is heading to New York, to Rodef Shalom, Congregation Rodef Shalom in New York City, to serve the Jewish people and to add her voice. And in Mira's case, that has many levels, because she adds her voice as we all add our voice, and she has an incredible voice and is also an incredible musician, and brings all sorts of wonderful things. And I just wanted to acknowledge Mira being here today, and also acknowledge the importance of just Jewish communities, all of our Jewish communities, in the places that they are, we nourish Jewish souls who then nourish Jewish souls, right, in different ways, and bring so much into our world in different kinds of ways. And that's actually, when Tali said the work is all of ours, right? You give back the work. That's not actually just the work of the rabbi, right? That's the work of all of our congregation, and the way that we support each other and nurture each other and support our learning and our growth throughout. And I just want to wish Mira b'chatzlacha, and that your voice continues. And I've been Mira and I, in her year in Israel, took a walk. I wasn't doing Hartman. I was walking back to my apartment, and I was at HUC, and Mira walked back with me. So I don't know, it was a 20, 25 minute. Yeah. Yeah. So we took a long walk, and we're going to have coffee on Monday. So we're bookending the 6 year of rabbinical school together. But it's I know how much your voice and your teaching and your spirit and your intellect will sustain and enrich our people at this time of incredible change and adaptivity. So, b'chatzlacha from all of us. And we are now going to count the Omer. I believe that's on page 278.
Right.
It's not on here. So, this is the last night, ladies and gentlemen, of counting the Omer, because tomorrow is Shavuot. So we are at 49 days, right? 7 times 7, right? 7 weeks. 7's this wonderful mystical number of wholeness and completion, and we are completing 7 times 7, the counting of the Omer. Tomorrow we all stand together at Sinai. I am ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer. Blessing, middle of page 278.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu Al Svirat HaOmer.
Praise to you, God, who makes us holy through mitzvot, commanding us to count the Omer.
Hayom Tisha ve'arba'im yom shehem shiva shavuot la'omer.
Today is day 49, which is 7 weeks of the Omer. Yep.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I am pleased to bring you greetings on behalf of our Board of Trustees. I'd like to thank Rabbi Kupitz and Cantor Bush for helping to lead our services tonight, and to Randy Polivoy for that impromptu piece that he played. Also thanks to Claudia Gonzalez, who does so well managing our tech and a little extra challenges tonight with all of the extra audio-visual aids, so well done for that. Thanks to Leo for being our teacher tonight. And certainly special thanks to Rabbi Zelkowitz for wonderful and thoughtful and thought-provoking presentation. We appreciate your presence and being our special speaker for the Brenda Rosenfeld Scholar Program. Thanks to our musicians, Dana Sundin and Menachem Mirsky, for adding to our services. And Menachem, we will miss you. Thank you for being here.
I also wanted to, yes, I will miss you a lot, but there will be a chance I will come from time to time.
We expect that. Yeah, no, we certainly look forward to that. Thanks to our congregants who generously donated delicious items for our oneg tonight. We thank the My Jewish Neighborhood group, ably led by Jane Quatcher. We had a number of volunteers tonight who helped keep us safe and greet you tonight. Our outside greeters were Lori Borer and Kylie Sykes. Our lobby greeters were Vicki Hollander and Judy Rose. And our parking lot greeters were Jack Warshaw and Toyasha Sebag. Following tonight's service, we join in our social hall for Kiddush, Motzi, and refreshments and good conversation. Please take this opportunity to meet someone new, to greet our two guest rabbis if you don't know them, and meet someone new. We have a really nice turnout tonight, so please reach out and meet someone new. Busy weekend ahead. Shavuot, our Erev Shavuot service tomorrow night is 7:30 p.m. Shavuot day service is Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. Sunday afternoon at noon, the Women of TBI, WTBI, has a picnic in Memorial Park. And then we have confirmation, the confirmation service at 6:30, which is 1 week hence.
No, it's Sunday.
Sunday, it was Sunday.
A busy weekend.
It is a very busy weekend. So confirmation is Sunday night at 6:30. And then a reminder that our rummage sale for our educational programs is June 12th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Neil.
The only thing it's not an ad, it's just a clarification that tomorrow evening for Shavuot is not a service, but a program with Dr. Tali Zelkowitz, and we'll have blintzes and cheesecake and some non-dairy things for all of the Jews who can't eat dairy, which is actually most of us, but most of us will eat the cheesecake and the stuff anyway. But those who don't we will have some non-dairy options as well as we go into that. So let's move toward the conclusion of our service. Aleinu L'Shabeach is on page 282, middle of the page. If you're able, please rise.
Aleinu L'Shabeach Ladon Hakol לתת גדולה ליוצר ראשי שלא עשינו כגויי הארצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל עמונם ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Page 287.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
You may be seated, page 294. We take a moment to remember those who have been important in our lives and have left this earth, those who have died in recent days or at this time in years past. If you're at home, I invite you to put names that you're thinking about in the chat. One note, we had a partner of a congregant. Sharon Zaki is our congregant. Her partner, Randy West, passed away today. The burial hasn't taken place yet. We have remembered the recent deaths of past President Jerry Title, of Beatrice Caden, mother of Terry Helfand, of Ava Besbris. We remember the Yortzites, the anniversaries of the deaths of Frank Flowers, Morris Lerner, Georgia Gillespie, David Hunt, Excel Hunter, Joanne Klein, Sarah Lipset Allison, Benjamin Adelson, Leah Loney, Lorraine Friedman, Babette Kamens, Jerome Paris, Jack P. Shack, Leah Spencer, Joseph Kalig, Joel Friedman, Dorothy Litwack, Jean Stacy Neal, Alvin White, Miriam Ziskraut, Dorothy Bain, Hyman Shaven, Eva Elliott, William Hyman, Jeanette Immergluck, Kate Chi Levy, Lee Buxbaum, Nathan Goldman, Roy Katz, Rose Betty Kelber, Jack Litton, Sidney Michelson, and Helen McDonald. If you're remembering somebody on this Shabbat and you'd like to add their name to those I've mentioned or restate a name I've mentioned, please feel free to do so as I come by your row. If you're in a time of mourning or observing a Yortzeit on the Shabbat, I invite you to please rise. And I invite the rest of the congregation, if it's your custom, to rise and embrace in support of those who mourn. Kaddish is on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
Bi'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam olomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dukudusha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushpichata v'nechemata da'amiram bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be always for a blessing. We'll conclude, bottom of 321, last stanza. Eyado afki ruchi, eitishan ve'aira.
Adonai liv Eloi ra Ve'im ruchi geviati Adonai li velo ira.
My soul I give to you.
My soul I give to you.
My spirit in your care.
My spirit in your care.
Draw me near, I shall not fear.
Draw me near, I shall not fear.
Hold me in your hand.
Hold me in your hand.
Draw me near, I shall not fear.
Draw me near, I shall not
Safely in your hand.
safely in your. Together, Beyado. Beyado al kibruchi. Be'erishan be'ayiram. Ve'imruchi geviati. Adonai li velo ira. Ve'imruchi geviati. Adonai li velo ira.
Please join us in the social hall for Kiddush Motzi refreshments. For those who have joined us online, thank you for being with us. Shabbat Shalom.
Zoom tomorrow.